Hi, I'm Brigitte Foisy, Vice President of Chefs Canada. Today I'm thrilled to turn the table and put our own Chefs Academy Dean in the spotlight. You know him, Chef Romain Avril, for his croissant review, and my favorite is serve it or trash it posts on social media. He has worked in some of the world's and Europe's top Michelin star restaurants and here at home at some of our favorites. He is an author and his recently published inaugural cookbook, The Vegan Bridge, has been seen on several magazines and on TV shows including The Social. Today we'll be talking about a topic that is often requested by our industry professionals on our social channels and also on our website: how to calculate food costs accurately in order to maximize profitability. So, with no further ado, Chef Romain Avril, what is food cost and why is it so important for chefs to understand?
Well, food cost refers to the percentage of revenue that a restaurant spends on purchasing food supplies. It's crucial for chefs to grasp because it directly impacts profitability down the road, the bottom line, and it can affect menu pricing decisions as well.
So let's go on to the art of it. How do you calculate food cost?
Well, food cost can be calculated by dividing the total cost of ingredients used in a dish by the menu price of that dish, then multiplying it by 100 to get a percentage. The formulas are quite simple. First, you need to calculate the actual food cost, the cost of goods sales. You'll need to take your net inventory with the beginning inventory minus the ending inventory. And to that, you'll add the food purchase. Then we'll grab that number, divide it up by the total sales times 100, and we'll get the food cost percentage. For example, the ingredients for an entree of burgers and fries cost $3. The menu price for this entree is $10. Ingredient cost of $3 by sales price of $10 equal 0.3. So to get the food cost percentage, we're gonna do 0.3 times 100 equal 30%. Every $10 burgers and fries entree costs $3 to make. $7 is left over to help pay for all the other costs of running a restaurant.
What are the common factors that contribute to food cost fluctuation?
Well, there's many of them mostly. Seasonality, market price, cost of ingredients, the portion sizes, but also the waste, and we know I talk about the waste a lot, and the supplier contracts can also influence the food cost.
So how can chefs control and reduce food costs in their kitchen?
Well, there's definitely a few ways, but chefs can control food costs through careful menu planning, portion control, inventory management. We also have reducing waste, negotiating with suppliers, very important, and optimizing the kitchen processes as well.
What role does menu engineering play in managing those food costs?
Probably one of the most important. Like menu engineering involves analyzing the popularity, the profitability of the menu items to make strategic decisions about pricing, promotion, menu offerings, ultimately helping to maximize revenues and control food costs.
How can chefs maintain food quality while managing those costs?
And that's probably one of the hardest one, and we have to do that on a daily basis because we have to answer, obviously, owners. So chef can maintain food quality by sourcing high quality ingredients efficiently, minimizing waste through proper, obviously, storage, portioning, and constantly refining the recipes so we optimize the food cost without compromising the taste or the presentation.
What are some common mistakes chefs make that negatively impact those costs?
Well, a common mistake, I think the most important one is over-portioning. That's a big one. The inadequate inventory management leading to spoilage or excess ordering, and that happens in kitchens every day. Not monitoring supplier pricing and quantities and weight, and failing to adjust menu pricing in response to the cost fluctuation. I think this is the biggest one for me. If your supplier pricing are changing, but you are not changing your pricing on the menu or your inventory, that's where you're gonna get lost.
How can chefs stay updated on industry trends and best practices for managing those food costs?
So chefs, they can stay informed through the industry publications, for example, one you're very familiar with, attending seminars, workshops. Restaurant Canada show was actually just happening last week, networking with peers and leveraging online resources, so many of them available, and of course, professional association dedicated to culinary management, or ourselves, Chefs Canada, of course.
Yeah, I think relationships with other chefs are great. At a time when ingredients are so expensive, is it worthwhile for chefs to reduce their menu or take certain ingredients and use them multiple times within the menu to maximize those purchases.
100%, and that's something I do a lot of consulting, and that's something, the first thing I look at is the size of the menu. Having too many options means having a larger inventory. If something doesn't sell, chances are it's going to get spoiled, you cannot resell it, and that's a waste. Obviously it's a waste also in your back numbers. So reducing the amount of menu items, I like to say for a restaurant to have 40 to 60 items is already plenty for the guests to be satisfied without hurting like your food costs so much. For smaller restaurants, I would say 20 to 30 is like a good number to be at. So we're going to talk about 7, 8 appetizers, 6, 7 main course, and then a few desserts as well. And cross-using is also very key, especially for larger scale restaurants. So to be clever, how to use something, for example, let's say scallions, you can have it on few dishes, one of the garnishes, one part of the filling. So we have less ingredients. They are not used in the same way, so the customer doesn't realize we cross-using. For example, like onions gonna be used everywhere, but also sometimes it's the different part. Like you have, for example, a fennel, you could use the bowl for something, use the fronts for garnish, and then maybe the tops, you can pickle them. So it's also thinking about what we have, reducing the waste, and turn that waste potentially into revenue and adding value into your dishes.
I think reducing waste is such a big topic right now, and we've covered it several times in our last academy with Eric Robertsons from Promo Reset, but I feel like it's still managing your inventory and cross-using, like you're saying, those ingredients can maximize revenue, using them for stock, using them for pickle, like you said, like could maybe using those ingredients for those specials, right? Like I feel like having a stable menu is probably not the most smart thing to do at a time like right now when things are so costly.
Absolutely. I think like being reactive but also anticipating is even better. I mean, and I know it's harder for larger scale restaurants that have to go through like the corporates, the head of where, you know, you have to make, it has to be approved before it goes on the menu. That makes food costs really difficult because the season goes by. For example, asparagus will be on season in a couple months. Like you have to purchase them right now. This is where they're gonna be the best. This is when they're gonna be the cheapest. It goes on the menu right away. The second it's gone, remove it and move on with the different items. So in managing your menu, specials, 100%. This is like a great way to either use something that you change your menu, for example. New menu, what do you do with the old inventory? That's where you have to start being creative. You have an event with canapes, turn that into a canapé. So it takes the chefs to actually think ahead versus having to deal with it once it's too late. That will save you a massive amount of money in a bottom line at the end of the month. But you mentioned inventory. I think it starts by actually doing a proper inventory. We chefs have to take an effort to do it properly. Again, we talk about updating those costs because that also add, you know, if you don't measure what you have, your numbers are completely off. You might be running a 28% food cost, as in matter of fact, it's maybe at 32, 33, but because you didn't do your job right from the get-go, you cannot understand, you don't know where to fix it. So keeping our chefs, we have to make sure our numbers are done. We have to make sure we take time every month. We have to make sure that we recost things every quarter as well. Like, you know, you've cost a dish, you have it on the menu for a year, it doesn't mean the cost will be the same. So we have to stay on top of that for sure.
What are good percentages? I've heard in the industry a lot, like, you know, my food cost with my staff is 55% of my revenue. What are good ballpark for people to say, okay, I'm on the average side?
So it kind of depends the type of restaurant you're running. I would say if you are what we call like, well, a Michelin star, and we have them in Canada. If you're a Michelin star restaurant, most likely your food cost is going to be in the 35, 36, sometimes with 38%. I worked in two-story in England where we were running really high costs, but the reality is we're making money on the menu pricing. So those items aren't too bad when you reflect it on the menu. The idea is, I think, for, I would say, a traditional or a restaurant that uses good local farmers that are going to be more expensive, won't use like the big box store suppliers, 28 to 32. It's kind of like that ballpark that you want to be in. Ideally 30% is like the easy one to remember. If you're below 30, you will start to make money. Now you have to be careful that being under 30 also means to keep the standards, right? So sometimes chef will reduce the food cost, but it comes as a cost is the quality, of course, of the ingredients. Now we have what I will call like the chains restaurants, the one that have multiple locations, franchisee, etc., who buy in bulk, have the buying power. So that's a lot easier because they get better pricing. The ingredients might not be as good sometimes, and obviously it's easier for them to attain a similar food cost, and usually they will be 20 to 25%.
Would it be worth for chefs of small restaurant or owners of small establishment to get together and get pricing from larger suppliers?
I think the way we can operate as smaller chefs, scale chef, and something we talked about with Eric Robertson as well, is to indeed come together and purchase something. Basically, the way it works is simple. Like the farmers will produce what he needs for whomever asks from him. So let's talk about onions, because it's very simple. If you go to an onion farmer and you buy 5 kilos per year, of course those onions are gonna cost you an arm and a leg. But now if 10 chefs come to him and we're like, we each want 5 kilos of onions, the price decrease. So when we talk about small farmers with a high quality, or like whether it's a farmer or producer or whatever the case may be, if you come as a group and we decide to purchase from the same person, the same small farmers, now is going to allow his price to go down because he's for sure going to work more, sell more, so his numbers are better, therefore he's allowed to reduce. Maybe even 5-10% less will be a massive impact in 1 year. So yeah, chefs coming together and Chefs Canada is here for that too, is about chefs coming together, but you will never get out of my head that the more we are, the more powerful we are, the more the impact, whether it's on wasting the environment, but also in our food costs and therefore in our revenue that it's already so thin and so hard to get to something profitable.
We often talk about food costs by itself, but I feel like if we're going to talk about profitability, we should also include staff within that portion of cost. What is the percentage that typically gets associated with HR within the restaurant? If food cost is about 30%, we talked for a small restaurant, what would be your cost for staffing?
Yeah, so usually I would say, there's a number I'd like to be at because of course with staff we want people to get paid properly. We want people, especially here in the big cities, we want to make sure that people can go home, have a proper housing, be fed and have a good life. So that number is tricky, right? Right now I would say it's about 20 to 30%. So think about it, 30% of it is food, you add another 30% staff that you want to pay well, and then you're going to have to add bills, etc. That's what, to me, the main issue with, you want good food, you want good staff, you want them to pay well. There's one thing we can play with is rent. Rent is the one thing, the one cost that really makes the profitability very difficult, right? So, because I believe that we have to keep our numbers down, but we also to make sure that our staff is paid properly and taken care of, and we want to make sure our suppliers, if you're a traditional restaurant, you want to work with the best Canada has to offer, and definitely that will impact your bottom line.
So truly, when you calculate food costs, it's not just food. We should also have a big picture of HR, food, your rent, other bills, right? In order for, at the end of the day, every dish that you sell includes a percentage of profit, right?
Yes, exactly. The way I've been doing it, I've never really run just food costs. I've been doing, since I was 25, 26, I started to run and have paperwork to do. I would always, every day, and that's something I do daily. When I walk into the kitchen, I will go in front of a computer, I will grab my invoices, enter them. So by week, by day, I can keep track of my food costs, but also my staff. Based on your schedule, you can go into your POS system, pull up the hours, enter the hours of your staff on a daily basis, because it's a lot easier to do every day. It takes 10 minutes. Have your coffee. We all love to have an espresso when we walk into the kitchen. Have an espresso, put your number, so that way, in real time, and I'm talking about small restaurant as well, you can actually keep an eye on your cost, because staff costs can really be also a way to go downwards, because if you have too much much staff at one time, like you're not going to think of anything, but it impacts your bottom line directly. So you have to keep your staff in check, you have to keep your food in check, and of course you have all the bills. And as chefs, we don't really know those, right? So we have to make sure that we take those too, knowing there's more bills to come.
You talked about earlier, we talked about food waste. Is it a good idea for smaller restaurants to buy bigger inventory of what's in season and pickle it in advance, freeze it, or do whatever you guys do to make, recipe amazing, right?
100%, and that's something I say when I do my videos on social media. I try to educate not only the chefs, but also people at home. And for me, seeing strawberries and asparagus in December is frightening. So we do have to anticipate, and something we do very well in Ontario is ramps. So I like to use ramps as an example because everyone's like, oh, ramp season is coming in, it's gonna be so quick. So we have to make pesto, with the top, we're gonna make a pickle with the bowl, and then you can use the rest kind of like as it goes, whatever you have left over. But what I like to do is being preemptive. When you have strawberry season, buy more. They're gonna be at the best price, and you're gonna make jams, you're gonna make preserves, you're gonna make pickles. Every single way of you can actually use techniques that very simple techniques. So in December, have strawberry on the menu, have ramps, but they have been preserved in the summer. So you have to think 6 months ahead, and it's really not difficult because it's a cycle. You know that every year ramp's gonna come in spring, that strawberry gonna come in summer, that eggplant gonna come in summer. So think of a menu 6 months. You can write your menu like right now for summer already because you know what's coming. Seasons are the same even though they are changing. So think of that, think of how much you can buy, look at how much room you can allow as well. Don't overbuy because it's on season and then end up being wasted because you didn't have time to process it or just no time to really put it anywhere because you have a small venue.
Thank you, Chef, for all this information. We hope that it answered all your questions about the basics of food costs. If you need more information, have a topic that you'd like to cover, or would like to share your own expertise with our community, please DM us on our Instagram or on our website at chefscanada.com. Chef Romain Avril, thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.